This is the best RPG for the 2023. Places are based on ranking from the players. Lord of the Fallen is a sequel to 2014 Lord of the Fallen. This part unfolding centuries after the first installment. Gameplay-wise, the project is still similar to Souls-like action game. It's a dark fantasy game with a brutal combat system, huge bosses and huge levels. The development of the game was restarted several times, and as a result, the release had to wait for 9 years. The main feature of Lord of the Fallen is the ability to move to the second dimension with the help of the magical lantern. We have two worlds, Umbral and Axiom. This is the grave cross of this game. On one hand, Lantern is useful in battles as well. The special soul flight techniques allow you to literally pull the soul out of the enemy's body for a few seconds. During this time, the enemy becomes helpless, and strike on him causes ghostly damage. On the other hand, as an example, local snipers, who will shoot literally through the walls for the game, does not take into account the calicity of the other wall. There is the player cannot see the mob, but the mob see the player. As in the last part, there is still problem with the control. With each attack, the characters make a very big step forward. Literally, from 2 or 3 blows, the protagonist overcomes several in-game matters. Sometimes, when dodging, the protagonist jumps behind the back of the opponent, instead of the moving away from the blow. You never know where the darker side will end up in the heat of the battle. The most frustrating element of the Lord of the Fallen, however, is the bosses. The difficulty of the bosses has no logical explanation. Some are too easy and can be defeated almost from the first time. Others are very survivable and kill the main characters with a single blow. You never know what will happen next. The difficulty curve has gotten too crooked in this game. You have to replay locations, collect energy and level up your characters. We take hours of real time. Furthermore, the most bosses eventually become ranked enemies and the game gets even harder. However, this is a Souls-like game, where one of the most important factors is the atmosphere of the game, what its developers managed to do well. Atmosphere, graphic, immersion, all this is at a high level. Many of players continue to play and enjoy, despite all the difficulties in control and optimization. Remnant 2 is sequel to Remnant from the Ashes. The first part was a successful attempt to make own Dark Souls. What have the developer added? They made from the usual fantasy world with the big swords a cooperative third-person shooter, which had the same rule as from software games. High difficulty, dangerous opponents, big bosses, resurrection near the location, analog of bonfires. The project turned out to be not perfect, but it was on high enough quality and exciting enough to sell millions of copies. Now, in order to consolidate the success, the developers released Remnant II, a sequel, the task of which is to improve what turned out. However, the project's source code have been transferred from the last part to this one. For example, the plot remained just as bad. Humanity is again threatened by 3 monsters, which we kind of banished in the DLC, no? Our base is again the location block 14, and its center there is again a peace stone that transport the main characters of other regions. The dialogues are boring and the engine video are laughable due to the ridiculous direction. And the dumb armor man, seriously? He spent 10 seconds of your time getting into pose that will allow him to sell your items. But back to the good stuff. The idea that one playthrough can be strikingly different from another has been returned in the second part of the game. The game has several dynamic and static worlds. Playing with friends to find the same armor was very hard, because each time it was lying in different places. It's possible to finish the game, however many return to play the game repeatedly, because the levels are constantly being generated anew. There is an adventure mode that allows you to replay the locations in an alternative mode. Co-op for 3 people are a very important part of the game. It's possible to play the game alone, however, your companions give a completely different experience. As soon as they join, the world stops being so Souls-like. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, the optimization is severely lame, but it seems to be a trend in recent years in game development. It seems to me that the developers have created a project that is superior to the first part. Although not all the bugs are fixed, the output is not brilliant, but a very high quality and fun game. So, take your friend and break in the world of the Remnant 2. Sea of Stars is a tribute to old-school JRPGs. The original game for a narrow audience sold out a good number of copies and received very positive feedback. 2 chosen ones, a boy Zale and a girl Valerie, must save not only the fading order of Sultai's warriors, but at the same time the entire humanity. To do this, they will have to travel a lot, explore the world and fight. The story is extremely banal, especially the prologue. We are showing the young protagonist before they become warriors. It can certainly help us to get closer to the heroes, but nothing interesting happens, and that's why the prologue doesn't attract us. As for the locations, they are carefully designed. There is a competent design of levels, which are filled with paths, ladders, moving platform, exciting puzzles. The levels have enough secret knocks, with valuable trophies and chests, where you find either equipment or gems for sale. A fairly simple combat system, especially at first. However, as the difficulty increases, it's a grandmaster art to cast the right action, make attack, use skill, item, magic or combo attack. Criteria are worth mention separately. If you press the attack button against exactly the moment when the character hits the enemy, you will inflict increased damage to him. This is especially important in fights with creatures that charge attack, because in their case, 1 hit counts as 2. Block work the same way. When the enemy hurt the hero, you can absorb some damage by pressing the button. There is a large number of battles in the game. From some you can just run away, but even so, combat is a constant companion of the game. That's why it's important not to ignore QTA, from which this part of the game can turn into a routine. The main advantage of Sea of the Stars is of course its atmosphere, which is convenient through the graphic and soundtrack. Fan of retro game. This is our grail. The game is full of various references to classic JRPGs. Experts of the genre and lovers of atmosphere will definitely get in, but QTA routine and not so charming story put this game at the 9th place in the top. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Cyberpunk is a phoenix that could not hatch from the egg for 2 years, but finally it began to shine with the new colors. Phantom Liberty is perceived as a separate game inside the game, because the action of the DLC takes place in a sovereign city inside a night city. It's worth nothing, the story and especially the additional tasks. Previously, additional tasks were at the level of fetch and serve, but in Phantom Liberty we will constantly be called by Reed or Soika, tossing something interesting. Now side quests have a plot, a character and the influence of the player on the outcome of the quest. Thanks to this, immersion in the world of the game has increased a lot. There is not so many bosses, but they are made very well. There are battles with the big bosses inspired from the Ghost in Armor, for example, there are car chases with gunfires and spy Casino Royale as from Bond, and reincarnation in other characters as from Mission Impossible. New skill tree, weapon and equipment allow you to effectively deal with opponents, especially high-tech chip from the original game. I have special preferences from it. For example, V can identify the weaknesses of opponents right during the battle, or for example a new jump with the Mantis Blade. We demand more dismemberment and more action. However, this is also a spanful of tar. Pain and sorrow is about the enemies that still don't know how to take cover. Many of them run into your hands to die as quickly as possible. The new mechanic with containers are interesting for a while, but after a few runs for containers, you get used to them and you can already crack the box and opponents will not even notice you. But the work on errors carried out on excellent. I agree with the phrase that this is what the game should have been in the beginning. Assassin's Creed Mirage. The new Assassin is in many ways a return to its roots, the Middle East, Baghdad and Basim, the same from the last Valheim installment. Now it is not a large-scale trek as in the last three parts, but a local adventure for 20 or 25 hours. We are thrown into the 9th century, 315 years before the events of the first Assassin's Creed. Now the story takes place inside the neighborhoods of Baghdad. They aren't those huge open locations. We are no longer the demigod, we're now the quiet assassin. Some people like it, some not so much, but this is the factors that have influenced the popularity of the series. It's hard to forget that feeling when you imagine a hidden blade in your hand. But let's back to our hero. Basim knows about the Order of the Unseen and really wants to become a part of the Order. So he goes to the place of the Caliph on a mission in which two assassins have already died. After we get there, Basim will be swinging a sword and jumping on ledges as an assassin apprentice. Here we are 4 hours into the tutorial and now it's time for full story. The extra tasks have come back to us from the original itself. Steal something, escort someone, be someone's bodyguard. The main plot is about Basim becoming who he is in Valheim. So, those who haven't played the last part won't really understand what's going on here. As always, developer doing well. It's a brilliant atmosphere of the Middle East. The architecture of the city, dusty streets, and rare island of lush greenery are very well done. The music here is also up to the mark. Just what you expected from the Baghdad of that time. The familiar parkour system allows you to explore and enjoy the city in a state of flux. But we should not forget that we are an assassin who fight the ancients. Opponents are a pain for any part of the assassins. It's as if the guards don't change through the ages. They don't notice the bodies that have disappeared into the nearby bushes. However, they try to surround us at every opportunity. Consider that now we're not so a godlike machine, they're a much bigger threat than before. All in all, we've been given another Assassin's Creed. If you are used to the scope and RPG component of every previous part, you will mostly be upset. But if you are a true fan of the first part of the game, you will definitely like it. Final Fantasy XVI, a Game of Thrones in the style of anime? Let's break it down now. I personally missed the marketing campaign for the new game from Square Enix, so I wasn't even expected the game as a whole. Tiga and the new installment of Final Fantasy are in the nominations. Events are sent in a world called Valestia, which is divided into several constantly warring countries. Each state is built around the so-called Mother Crystal, a substance that gives magic to everything around it. Without magic, neither emperors, nobles, townspeople, peasants didn't know how to exist in Valestia. But at some point, the lands of several countries at once begin to be slowly consumed by a dark morass that siphons magic from these places and make them completely impossible to live there. The plot in Final Fantasy XVI is a strong point, and the events are well developed. The decision of some characters you soon begin to support, others you become wary of. The story evokes a ton of emotion. Most of the protagonist's plot opponents are not some typical run-of-the-mill evil. They are people who are fighting for what they believe in. Gameplay and story are very firmly tied together in this game. That is a strength, that is a downside. Anything that happens outside of the story is boring, so if you don't like the story, you won't get the whole game. NPC, it's like a Groot in the Marvel. Know only one phrase, no matter what is going on around them. A separate question to the appearance of the hero. For 20 hours of play, the hero changed his clothes just twice, and once it was needed in the story. This looks very strange in the world of fantasy. Combat in the game turned out to be very dynamic, although the main sword stroke are only 4. If there are only 4, then why it's so good? Because Clive, the main character of the game, has a lot of magical abilities. The blows depend on the chosen element, which are unlocked as the story progresses. Of course, the game has its problem, a sedgy narrative in the middle, slightly strange story moments, and exclusivity on the PS5. Through perhaps it's the exclusivity that allows the game to be at the top in technical terms. The harsh middle age turned by war, bandits, disease. This is all the atmosphere of Wartales, a strategy game with element of survival, turn-based battles and grim stories. The one more step effect is perfectly realized here. In and out, Morty, in and out. The night has passed and all your thought is about how to feed your band, pay everyone wages, provide overnight lodging, and not to lay down your head in battle. Money is constantly in short supply, food is scarce, and there are not enough resources to build a tent. Every day will be a challenge as you scurry around on quests that pay well and scour the forest for mushrooms. You won't find heroes in your squad, farmers who cannot feed the fields, bandits fleeing from the guards, deserters who left the battlefield, merchants who protect the merchants but failed. Characters are well defined. There are variability in the solution to story quest and in side quest too. Days here willingly replace nights. Wolves roam the forest around the clock, and cities never sleep. You can't wander the world for long without drawing your dagger. There's enemies everywhere who will try to wipe out your gang. The battles in Wartales are turn-based, like in Heroes of Might and Magic or Banner's Saga. Tanks, damagers, archers, plague wearers, and other units. The choice is not as big as in Heroes, but there is enough variety. After all, each unit is level up and has unique perks. For me, a mission diary was missing to read more about the missions. This would allow you to immerse yourself more and, in general, to understand who goes where and for what. My opinion, this game is great for fans of turn-based and role-playing games. Little Pinocchio has grown up, and now with a sword to swing, he has arrived in Krat, a progressive city that is facing 3 problems at once: a revolt of puppet machine, an invasion of monsters, and a mystery stone disease that has caused entire neighborhoods to be quarantined. Another Souls-like in our selection. There should be an interpretation of Pinocchio here, but except of the names of the character, we will not find anything familiar here. Whether we lie or not has very little effect on gameplay. The rewards for lying and telling the truth are the same, and when visiting the tower for the first time, you can't even tell the truth, otherwise you won't be allowed in. Kind of like we being pushed to lie anyway. But let's get back to the Souls-like components. Crooked camera at the wall in narrow passages. There is. Combination of bosses that last forever. Also here, tracking attack of enemies in place. That is, in general, list of problem of Souls-like games remaining in this game, but it should be noted that all of the advantages of Souls-like game are also presented in Lies of P. Absolutely all enemies in one form or another you could see in other game of the genre. What's new in this game? Pinocchio has Heart 2, which develops his talents. You can increase the number of treatment alloys, improve their effectiveness, and etc. Gameplay is affected not only by talented level up, but also by weapon and iron arm crafting. Crafting is the most original thing in Lies of P. Any weapon consists of two parts, a blade and a hilt, and you can connect them in any combination. Saw blade, rapier handle, easy. Iron arm looks like it's taken from Sekiro. Pinocchio has several interchangeable limbs that have been different effects. Some pour fire, while others attract enemy to him. Overall, the game is more grounded in pairing like it was in Sekiro, but theirs was much more convenient and aesthetically pleasing. What makes it easier? Often, after defeating a boss, turn the game off to just rest from it, instead of being happy for the fight. In summary, Lies of P, a game that incorporates the best moment from Sekiro, Bloodborne, and of course Dark Souls itself. It turned out to be a quality, enjoyable experience. It's not without its generic Souls parts, but it's definitely enjoyable for Souls fun to play. Avada Kedavra! Scared? Okay, let's go for Luminous then. After all, we have before us the game whose light has taken the title of biggest physical release in the UK from FIFA for the first time in a decade, and that is Hogwarts Legacy. Our top 3 open with a game in the Harry Potter universe. For a long time, players have been waiting for something quality, and finally they got it. The action of the game was moved to 100 years ago, before the appearance of Harry Potter. The writer herself did not participate in the development of the world and the plot of the game. However, fans will still find references to some characters of their favorite series of novels. The protagonist included to magic was found rather later, so he will have to start studying at Hogwarts right from the 5th year. Professor Elizar Fig, however, managed to teach us basic spell before sending us to wizard school, so we learned basic spell in a short period of time. Going into 5th year, the protagonist is a mega sorcerer. That's something Potter would definitely have heard of in 100 years. Maybe the authors took it a little too seriously. You want to explore Hogwarts up and down. In Hogsmeade, you want to visit every single shop and visit every town. The Forbidden Forest seems gloomy from afar, but in its own way attractive. Anyone who was ever read a book or watched a movie will instantly feel at home. As soon as the magic of this world becomes familiar, the weak point of the game, the plot, is seen. As I said in the beginning, the plot is very mediocre. If such a plot was in other game, not related to Potter, the hype would probably be less. Of course, there's some interesting, sometimes unexpected twists and turns, but they only slightly brighten up the overall blandness. Battles turn out to be interesting. The hero is able to combine spells with each other. There are different classes of spells. Let's break them down by the type of shields on our enemies. Those who use red shields need to be hit with powerful spells. For example, explosive. Those who are dressed in yellow will be stopped by controlling magic, and enemies with purple shield will be helped by a spell that allow you to push, twist or attract object. I expect to feel the life of a schoolboy at a magical academy, a conditional bully at Hogwarts. It's like, wow, for the first time, 3 hours and then it's boring. Far Cry, maybe this is you? However, I hope the Legacy will be the basis for the next game in this franchise, where the developer will patch these holes, because the wow effect has already passed in Legacy. Topping the list is a retro game that captured the spirit, style and atmosphere of SNES era gaming, Octopath Traveling 2. The story unfolds around 8 new characters and in a brand new land called Celestia, where diverse culture from east to west and new age industry thrive. You can say the seas and explore every corner of the world, which changes from day to night. At first glance, Octopath Traveler 2 appears to be a clone of the original. You choose one of the 8 adventures to start, collect the remaining 7 at the game process, and eventually see how their stories are connected, albeit somehow loosely. The turn-based combat is similar to the original, but with some nice updates. For example, the boost system, which allows you to create additional attack. You can use them right away or save and stack them to do even more damage later. It turns out you can take a risk and save up this attack, or you can attack right away, but not deal critical damage. A boosted attack may be enough to finish off a tough boss, but will you be able to hold out long enough to get to him? Overall, the combat does not get boring, and after even 40 hours of playing, it feels like I haven't tried out every type of attack yet. As JRPG go, the story component is very important, namely a mini story of each of the 8 characters, whose arc we can go through to learn how all the characters are intertwined with each other. I can say that you may have encountered each story separately in other Square Enix game, but here you can see like all this story are intertwined. Octopath Traveler 2 is a great sequel that improves on the original in several ways, tells a great story and delights with its combat system. And finally, the leader of the top, the Game Awards 2023, the Game of the Year, Baldur's Gate 3, the horse that had been galloping towards us for a very long time, and finally it's here. After all, the first mention of Baldur's Gate 3 were back in 2003. However, financial problem, the culture of the studio, led to its postponement. Later, Larian Studio got the development rights and since 2017 actively developing Baldur's Gate. Today, in 1 hour issue, we talked a lot about plot, narrative, atmosphere, characters and other things that makes an RPG. And Larian Studio has managed to release all of these things to perfection. One of the main problems the studio faced was to give inexperienced player a game based on the 5th edition of D&D rules, and the learning process go all the way through the first location. It all starts with a huge Nautiloid suddenly appearing over Faerun. The Mind Fresher have captured a lot of living beings, among which the protagonist turned out to be. Kidnapping is not the protagonist's only problem. For the Illithids, being hermaphrodites, they plant tadpoles in their victim brains to continue the species. The larvae devour the brain and eventually trigger the creature to transform into a new individuals of their race. So, finding a cure is a paramount, and the search with the company is much easier and more fun. So, we have the first member of the warband. Some of them will probably live, some of them will die, and some of them will become the protagonist's love interest. In the game, there is a wide choice of interaction with companions, and your interest in this game is about the side quest, because they affect both on the plot and on a relationship. The variety of skill in each class strategies lead to each conflict being resolved in multiple ways. Sometimes I restarted the boss fight to try something new. In summary, we have a juicy fights, an epic story and a huge number of bugs. What a big game like this be without the bug? Once the dragon, instead of starting a fight, just stood still. That's why saving every 5 or 10 minutes become a habit. The possibility to play together filled the game with new meaning. Sometimes it interfered with watching the next cutscene, but otherwise gave more life, humor in this huge, even boundless world. Although, Larian do not forget to put comedy in the game. What is only worth a troll and ogre? Who knows? He knows. To all fans of RPG, story-oriented games and even more, so to fan of D&D, this game will fall into your heart and will not let you go for a long time. Which game you like or which you didn't? Tell about, write in the comments.